Am I the only one that needs a palette cleanser? A project between projects that makes everything feel so easy and the results are pretty good even with minimal effort? Well, the Space Marine Heroes Series 2 collection, those are my palette cleanser. Let's do one of those now, shall we? Brother Darrago, the Terminator with a big old banner. Let's paint that guy up. Time to work on Brother Darrago. He's one of the Space Marine Terminators in the Space Marine Heroes kit. He's this guy. And I'm building him kind of in between a couple of other projects. I just find these so... I don't know, they're like my palette cleansers between projects. Seems a little odd, but these are relatively simple, they're uncomplicated, and when you're finished they look so good that when I'm done with a particularly difficult build, I turn to these to help me kind of get over the trauma of a successful for me, build. He's done. That was 7 minutes of build time. Obviously, he's one of these push-to-fit models, so of course he's going to be quick. But it was a nice, pleasant build. Of course, it's not going to stay this way. I've got a couple of changes to make. For sure, for example, I need to add a chapter-specific pauldron. I want to add a Deathwatch pauldron to that. Maybe do something about the standard. I don't know about having a standard. Don't know what I would replace that with, though, given how his arm is. But maybe I'll keep a standard. I don't have any standards in my army. It just makes him that much taller, so it's a little harder to store. Let me see what I come up with. So I'm going to leave this guy basically how he is. I'm just going to do 2 slight modifications. One of them is assign him to a chapter. And I've got this little bit that I'm going to glue to the shoulder pad right about there. And that'll make him from some chapter. I'm not sure what chapter this is. I'll have to look up some chapter. It looks like, I don't know if you can see it. Looks like it's a bird skull with wings attached. So I'll have to look up and see what kind of chapter that is. But I'm going to glue him down, glue the insignia down to the shoulder pad. I've tried gluing them down after I paint them, and I always have some, let's call them substandard results. So I'm going to try doing this from the beginning. That way, just to see if doing it differently will give you different results. It's the hope anyway. So I'm going to squeeze this in there. The insignia is curved, so if you squish it in there and let the super glue dry, it might work out. Alright, so it's on there. It should be affixed now from now on. The other thing is I need to replace this shoulder pad with this shoulder pad. This is a Terminator shoulder pad from the same bits company that made this guy. And so I just want to drop this in here kind of like so. So doing it this way, I normally have to sand this down pretty smooth, put this over the shoulder pad, and then attach the shoulder pad to the model. but I've had kind of mixed results. So I'm going to try just directly affixing the shoulder pad to the arm. It's going to leave me with some space though, so I'm going to use some milliput to kind of fill in some of this part, some of the shoulder pad. I've always had kind of mixed results working with milliput. Alright, so I've got the shoulder pad on and I've got the insignia back on. We'll let the milliput set for a little while. Then I'll give it some prime and we'll go from there. Here's our Terminator. He's been primed. And the shoulder pad looks like it's in place. It's a little iffy. The insignia is there. It looks like these are this is a Death Eagle's insignia. It uses a white shoulder pad, black wings, and a bone-colored skull. So that should be relatively easy. Kind of made a mess of some of that part of that shoulder pad. It's not as smooth as I'd like it to be. Some glue residue kind of on the shoulder pad. I'll have to clean that off. But for now, I'm just going to add a bit of a base coat. And I want to try something that I've been toying with. So basically, anything that's black is just going to be a glaze. And the spots that are it'll inevitably leave kind of less black parts to it, and I'll go back and I'll wash the model, just kind of the base, with a different color so that there's some kind of color showing up in the background, but it's mostly black. I've had kind of mixed results with it, and I think it's just that I'm doing something not quite right. So I'm not ready to give up on that technique just yet. So here goes the base, glaze. So that's the first coat of the glaze. It's not dark enough, but that's okay. I can always go back and add more glaze. I'll just let this settle for a bit and let it dry. So here we are with the second layer of glaze. And it's darkened up quite a bit. It's almost black. It's still kind of gray, but that's all right. I'm going to give it another go. I'm going extra thin with this because I want to make sure that I don't go all the way black, because I do want to add a kind of a hint of color on the armor, but it only works if the armor isn't too black. So this is a good start. So I'm thinking another coat, maybe a fourth of the glaze, will be just dark enough that it'll be black, but still give me some patches of kind of white to work with. And so there's a look at the back. I did start laying down the base color while this was drying. I started laying down the base color of the banner. I chose this bone white because when you wash it with like a dark brown wash, it gives it a really cool leather look, other than just like straight up brown. I'm not sure what I'm going to do with the stuff inside yet, but that'll be cool. So I'm going to start giving it this next layer of glaze. When I talk about glaze and wash, I'm assuming everyone knows what I'm talking about, but this is a noob-friendly channel, so I'll just kind of talk a little bit about what I mean. Whether something is a base coat or a glaze or a wash, in some cases, you know, you buy a specific kind of paint bottle to get exactly that. Like, you can buy bottles of washes from a couple of different places, like Citadel Color or Army Painter. I'm sure Vallejo has a similar thing that they sell. But they're basically just continuums of the same thing. So basically, you can think of a glaze as a paint that you've washed, that you've washed up a little bit. You've thinned it out just a little bit. Now, there isn't a good indicator for what that just a little bit means. With experience, you kind of figure out kind of the difference between a glaze and a wash, or a glaze and a base. But for starters, it's really hard to tell. There's really not a good definition. Basically, it's just a base color is pretty close to what you get out of the bottle in most cases. If you buy a paint bottle, it'll be essentially a base or even a layer paint. When you dilute that a bit, you get a glaze. And if you dilute that even more, you get a wash. So it really is just a way of saying, when I say a glaze or a wash, it's just a way of me saying that I've diluted the paint either quite a bit or a lot. I hope that makes some sense. All right, so here it is with the third layer of the glaze. Looks quite a bit darker. I'm tempted to just stay there. I'm afraid that if I do one more coat, it's going to be too dark. So I think that's where I'm going to stay. But I will start on the I heard it. No, that's not it. I will start on the wash that I'm going to use for the banner. I'm looking for the right shade of brown. I was looking at it, I swear. Yeah, nice dark shade of brown. If you dilute it enough. And you apply it over bone white, you get a really nice leather look. It's basically like if you water it down enough, you end up someplace like this, the soft tone. But I've found that in practice, this is too soft. It's too dilute. I don't get the dirty leather look that I'm going for. So I'm just going to spread the wash. I'm trying to use long, steady strokes so that it looks like one single sheet of leather. I'm also trying to let it pool in the recesses. So you see how there's that big long line. If you just let it pool there, it'll give you a nice depth. But I want to make sure I control where it pools. It's naturally going to want to pool towards the bottom because that's what gravity tells it to do. And that's usually okay, it's fine. But on large pieces like this, you want to be more deliberate about where it pools. So I'm going to let it dry, laying down. So it'll kind of pool evenly on the flat spots and unevenly in the recesses. While that dries, I'll add the last bit of my black glaze. Alright, so I've let it dry. I added another little pass of the leather wash to the banner. It's kind of uneven back here. It's kind of pretty streaky. I don't like the way that looks. So give it another pass. I don't know if that's going to get better. So I've developed a kind of a light purple wash that I'm going to add to everything that's black. That should give me some kind of purple highlights, which is an odd thing, right? But it's really only going over, it's only going to show up, well, the plan is, it'll only show up in certain places. Anywhere where it's basically white right now, it'll just have this hint of purple to it, which I'm hoping will look pretty nice and not weird and goofy. It's really just for a splash of, not a splash even, it's a hint of color. Almost like maybe at one point this armor was purple and someone gave it a slapdash coat of black. I've seen it work well in other models. I'm hoping it'll work well here. But yeah, it's a really thin glaze. You don't want it to be purple because this is Deathwatch after all. And just have a hint of purple, and I don't want it to pool any one place. So I'm making sure to clean up any kind of large deposits of this stuff. Oh! Alright. Taking my first pass at this banner, while a third, maybe a fourth coat of the purple wash dries. I think it's too light, and it doesn't help that as I'm applying it, some of the base coat is coming off. Not sure what that's about. So I'm keeping the colors that I'm using on the banner pretty consistent with the Deathwatch colors. So it's going to be blacks and reds. Well, maybe not too many blacks. And painting this banner is relatively straightforward, if a little delicate. Thankfully, it has raised lines in all the major elements. Just have to be careful not to slip into the other parts of the banner. Some of the bigger spaces will probably require a couple of different passes. Just adding a couple of base or under base layers where appropriate. So the staff of that holds the banner, I'm going to keep it black, just because I really can't make a convincing wood staff. Certainly not next to the leather color the way it is. It would look like there was all one color. I think if I was a better painter, I could probably pull it off, having two kind of browns next to each other, but I am not that good a painter, so I'm play it safe, which is inherently less interesting. but that's the way it goes. Yeah, I've prepped the banner for its life as something more interesting than it is. I still don't 100% know what it's going to look like at the end, but I'm just kind of building some base concepts, and I'll play it by ear. I do know that I want to keep with the Deathwatch motif, so keep, reds, maybe some black, the gold as accents. These little planets, or these little stars on the banner, so I've had a foundation of metallic, like a gun metal, like a dark silver paint. Over them, I'm going to add just a wash of a slightly different color to each of those, kind of with the idea that they'll symbolize something. Like, I don't know, 4 different planets or 4 different systems under the protection or something like that. Like, I'm not going to flesh out the story. I'm just going to provide visual cues that suggest a story is there. I don't know if that makes any sense, but it makes sense in my head. I think, looking at this banner, there is some freehanding in my future, and if I'm not a good painter, I'm an even less competent freehander. So that should be interesting. And by interesting, I mean probably a disaster. I'm adding just a little bit of black wash to kind of the underside of these Aquila details. Something I've seen other YouTubers do to great effect, just to add a little bit of depth to metallic gold. I don't know if it works well for me. It might. And I'll give this red another pass because it was a little streaky the first time. So adding a second coat is going to help me remove some of that streakiness, but also bump up the color. It makes it a little brighter, a little more red. I don't want it to be too bright because the idea is this is an old banner, and so paint on old banners should, have some kind of fading. But I do want good coverage of the red. So and I am using a slightly different red for the banner parts than I would for the armor. The idea there is that red on armor is going to look different than reds on fabric or textiles, or in this case, leather. It's not a huge difference, and it may not even be all that noticeable, but I've seen good painters use different versions of the same color in the model to really good effect. So I want to be a little more confident using, different reds or what have you on the same model, because you only improve with practice. So let's call this practice. There's some very fine lines on this banner, and I find that I'm being very cautious, and I'm still, kind of messing up in different places, but I'm trying to be cautious. So I'm using very light pressure on places where I have a very thin line to work with. Almost like I'm overpainting, which is a good description since they're raised areas. So it's kind of like overpainting, but not necessarily overpainting. It's just the same very light pressure. So far, I've made a little progress with the base, just adding kind of the base colors. I did a little black wash, or a little black dry brush over the base, and I've added places where they'll be metallic. But I'm considering doing a little freehand there, and I think I'm just going to do an Inquisition eye. I think that's within my abilities. I think. So I'm going to give it a shot. I've never done any freehanding, but let's see what that looks like. Well, that was gross, but it's mine. That's all that counts. It was pretty bad. Ugh, it'll be fine. Just doing a little silver dry brush on the pauldron, the Deathwatch pauldron. That doesn't look too bad. Looks all right. I think I'm going to hurry up and put this guy on his base because I'm noticing a lot of, you see how the legs are kind of getting white? They weren't quite that white. I think it's my handling is rubbing on these raised edges, and it looks kind of cool, but I want to control how much of that happens. So I'm going to finish the base so that I can mount the figure onto the base and then use my painting handle, because that's the paint's coming off way quicker than I'm comfortable with. I do not like that. So the base has some like metal grill kind of floors, but they're on top of what looks like a concrete slab. So I'm painting up the metal parts, making them gunmetal. And once they dry, I'm going to give them a wash of Fuegian orange. It sometimes gives me a nice rust-colored effect. Other times it gives me just a weird orange metal effect. I don't know what the deal is there, but sometimes it does what it wants, and other times it doesn't. So I'm going to keep trying it in the hopes that I figure out what I'm doing differently. I do know that it works differently if I'm using like a bright silver versus the gunmetal silver. Those two do look differently for some reason. I don't know why that is. But sometimes when I use the gunmetal silver, it'll still do a weird thing where it doesn't look like rust. It looks like orange metal, which isn't bad in and of itself, but it's really not what I was looking for. So one of these days I will figure it out. covered it up. It was way too bad. That free-handed eye, it just wasn't going to work. So I'm working on covering it up. It's a work in progress. Getting white paint to cover black paint. Oof. That's a job. I don't know what I'll put over that. Maybe I'll try my hand at making some decals or something. I don't know. But it may have been my last attempt at freehanding anything. The base is almost done. It's not great, but I've done worse. Yeah, okay. I guess it's done. Yeah, so it's got like the metallic rusty grates. It doesn't look quite rusty. It looks almost like a copper, which is not what I was going for, but whatever, it's fine. There's some copper wiring, a couple of little things of like wire conduit or something, a couple of rocks. It's an interesting base. And I'm going to glue this guy on because I don't want to keep handling him directly. As long as I'm gluing stuff. I did the Terminator head, basted in white, gave it a wash of the bone white, and then gave it some white highlights, red eyes, and kind of some black detail. Kind of just use a dropper method where I got a little brush with a black wash and kind of touched some sunken areas, and so it filled in by itself. I like how he's looking off to the side there. On the arm, I've done his shoulder pad, the Death Eagles. I even did a little border. The border of the pauldron has the black outline. And so I've got most of the stuff done there for the gun. But before I glue it, there's some details I want to finish. And I'm not quite sure what I'm going to do about all this paint that rubbed off. Maybe I'll try to go back in and touch it up. I don't know if it'll take, but yeah, okay. I guess it does. That's probably sufficient. And I'll put it on this painting handle. Harder than it looks. All right. So I'm going to go in and just really add some details. There's not a ton left to do. I'm going to add some detail to the gun arm and a little bit of wash on the eagle part of the, there we go, actually that's a ton better. Yeah, it was the eagle skull there was looking pretty undetailed. Nothing like a little bit of wash to bring out the detail of a small part like that without a ton of work, which is the more important piece of this. lesson. So for all these details that have gold on them, I'm going to go over them with just a little bit of black wash. I feel like it really helps the detail pop out on gold. Of course, the trick is not to be too dark. Because if you overdo it, it just becomes like a dark gold or something. So the difference is, like on a piece like that little color up there, that's the piece without the black wash. This is what it looks like after the black wash. It's just a bit more detail to it. It might be subtle, but it's real to me, darn it. So I'll give you another example here with the gold little trinket that he's got there. I'll add a little black wash there, and a little black wash here. And the gold piece should stand out quite a bit more. In fact, that one probably needs a bit more black wash, kind of just dumped into the edges. This might need a gravity assist. Oh, okay. So I'm just touching the gaps with a pretty thin mixture of black wash. So I've got most of the work done. Some more details I've got to do. Kind of like the gauntlet. Maybe do a little bit of edge highlighting to kind of match up with what's happening down here. And there's not much left after that. So let's get to it, shall we? So I haven't done a lot of customization on this model, and I do want to have a little detail. And I think I know just the thing to add. So the outside of the storm bolter, it's pretty plain. It's a good place for a little decoration. And I have just the thing. I got this a couple of days ago. It's a little expansion or like a customization kit. It's from Pop Goes the Monkey. It's intended to convert a model into like an officer for the Deathwatch. And I have a project for some of the bits of this kit. I don't intend to use all of it. But it has these really cool little pieces. They're super hard to see. Oh no! It's gone. Yeah, it's so tiny. I'm never going to find it again. Let's try this again. So, I don't know if you can tell what it is. It's a little skull. It's the tiniest of skulls. It's made of resin, and I'm going to glue it on to the gun as a little embellishment. Wish I could find the one that flew away, though. I'm never going to find that thing. It's so tiny, and it's not quite clear, but close enough to clear that it's just gone, dude. It's just gone. Now this is super glue. I mean, this is resin, so I'm not sure that plastic glue is going to cut it. So I need just a little drop of super glue. And it's so tiny I'm not quite sure I'll be able to do what I want with it, but I'll give it a shot. It's on there. Once it dries, I'll give it a paint and see what that looks like. It's not a big deal, but it's the little things, especially for an army like Deathwatch. You want to make it your own wherever you can. Now I'm just going to add in some of the bullet casing detail to the base. It's going to be a little hard to see because the bullet casings are right on this other metallic part, and the bullet casings themselves are metallic, so they're going to get lost in translation, but might as well give it a shot. Not all of them will be lost like that. Like this one here will be fine. But most of them will be here, and you won't be able to see them very well, but I'll know they're there. Yeah, it's hard to tell the detail right now. It should stand out a little bit better with the gold, but it's really important for these little resin pieces to be to have an undercoat because they're so translucent. I mean, they're not quite transparent, but they're translucent. Metallic paints just really wash out on it, so you really do want to undercoat these with a dark color. Usually, undercoating isn't that big a deal, but in this case, it absolutely is. I'm adding some finishing touches to this banner, including what I think might be really cool to give that eagle some red claws. Been dry brushing the gloves a bit, just to kind of give me some highlights between the fingers. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. All right, I think it's time for a little glue. And this time I won't even bother taking the peg off. It's going to go in the same place as the sculptor intended, so I think it's done. I'm going to give it a blast of some, what's it called? I don't know, the sealant thing. Hold please. This stuff, I'm going to give it a blast of this stuff because it was a quick paint. So here he is. Brother Darrago is all painted up and ready to join his Terminator brothers in my Deathwatch army. So far I've had a great time painting these models in the Space Marine Heroes 2 collection. These seldom feel like work, and they're really forgiving of my clumsy painting, and they always look great. So what did I learn with this build? Well, the first thing is washing a color over a black glaze makes a black model a bit more visually interesting. The subtle patterns of color on the black model almost looks like a glow of some type, and it's pretty easy to do. Number 2, washes are your friend. They help pull out the details from your model without having to intentionally add highlights and shadows. It's basically model painting cheating. Yeah, there's a danger that it can become a crutch, keeping us from becoming better, more intentional painters, but if you're looking to get a model onto the tabletop as quickly as possible and making sure it looks pretty decent, this is the way to go. Finally, freehanding symbols is hard, and I'm just not good at it. Sure, I could practice, but I've never been good at drawing, and I think my time would be better spent making decals and transfer sheets. In any case, thank you very much for watching. I appreciate your patronage, and I hope to see you in my next video. Have a great one. Bye.